Big data represents one of but a handful of major transformations driven by technology that are reshaping the marketing research industry over the last 20 years. It is offering up the opportunity to know what people are doing online when in a survey and married and integrated with attitudinal data presenting a more complete picture of the consumer. Now, for those of us who have been in the industry for a while, waves of innovation and change should look familiar, kind of like an old movie. And with that construct today, I think we're going to look at that old movie and make our way across Kansas. Big data, for example, to many, sort of looks like the Emerald City out there, an offer of digital answers and a panacea on the horizon. And we're just going to sort of walk along the yellow brick road all the way to those answers. However, for some, the fact is digital data is more ominous. It's threatening. It's intimidating. Not sure what it's going to mean to the science or to the industry. In reality, the truth is it's our job. We are the ones behind the curtain, turning the dials, figuring out the methodologies, determining the metrics, and usually this type of stuff begins with pilot tests, and that's why we're here today. The 3 points that we'd like to address in highlight form is first, what did we learn about the volume of digital consumption along the path to purchase? My colleague and client will talk a little bit about deeper insights in automotive, and then I'll wrap up with a few key observations. The methodology is defined in the paper, but it begins by drawing a random sample out of the Luth National Panel. We conducted close to 2,000 interviews, dove into perceptions and media consumption habits and intentions to purchase across 3 categories: automotive, pizza, and smartphones. We repeated that study every wave for 4 weeks. Key to this was overlaying on top of that data their actual home PC digital behavior, where they went online, how much time they spent. And by integrating the attitudinal survey with the digital data, we begin to get a clearer picture of what happens on that path to purchase. So first key insight worth observing. As consumers move down the stage of purchase and get closer to the moment of buying, their consumption of digital media goes up dramatically. 2 things. For many in this room, that's a blinding glimpse of the flippin' obvious. But we now can quantify it and see the positive correlation between level of consideration in the purchase and amount of digital media consumed. Next, we all know the powerful of word of mouth. When we asked folks in the survey who you depend on and the degree to which you depend on friends and family for advice, we could see when it come to, say, automotive or smartphones, early on it mattered and then it sort of waned. But when we look at their behavior in visiting review websites, we found for automotive a surge as you got close to the purchase. Put another way, the opinion of someone I don't know and have never met, but who has experience with the specific product I'm interested in, matters a lot more to me on the threshold of purchase than someone months ago telling me that I should always buy domestic. As far as pizza goes, no one goes to a website to check out a pizza. What they do is they take a poll at home and choose the pizza most likely to keep peace in the household. Now, a word about social media, 2 findings. First, in the grand scheme of things, the influence of social media on influencing purchase is underwhelming. Second, the key might be understanding which voice you want to hear in social media. Is it Judy or is it the Munchkins? Because the difference between the role a national brand plays in social media versus the local dealer or retailer is very different. What we found is that visits to social media brand sites in the automotive category went up as you got closer, but the dealer role really never hit the meter. That's different in smartphones, where the device was never really significant, but the network provider and local retailer was. This is the kind of insight that matters as we're trying to understand the impact of digital media. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, a voice from a great brand, Will.
Thank you. So many people think of Ford as a bit of a Rust Belt company that kind of always looking in the past, but the reality is we're always trying to move forward. The purchase of a vehicle is an extremely complex thing for most people. Most of you who have bought a new vehicle have no idea that sort of extra half of why did I really buy this? What this is giving us the chance to do is actually look at that and try and understand that last 10 yards of what happens between when I do all my rational research and then how I finally go home with a new vehicle. So what we first had to understand was all the normal research that we had done, traditional research, surveys, things like that, very flat, tells us that what people are looking at when they're looking at ads, when they're looking at TV, when they're looking at print, they look at about the same amount all through the purchase process. What was interesting to us is when we started looking at the digital part, we said, look, at the last minute, there's a lot going on. We need to understand what's going on at that point, and what are they looking at. Now, when we did this research, we kind of broke it down into just 4 quick pieces. There is so much more here. This is what the future is to us, is understanding all of that non-rational piece. This is not the stuff that you spit out in a cocktail party, the stuff that says, oh, I want to buy that car because it makes me feel cool. All this piece is telling us is good diagnostics starting to get to the dissection of what people are looking at and when they're looking at it. Last piece is thinking about the who. When we look at data like this, when we work in a process like this, we're now able to dig back in and say, okay, who are these people and what's going on? When we look at the people who are looking at other brands, Hyundai, Toyota, and we realize they're stopping at us, but they're not going to necessarily buy us. This is the opportunity for us to start finally digging in and saying, hey, what's going on there? Are we the last guy you date before you marry somebody different? Or is this something that's much more positive, meaning everybody benchmarks you? That's the kind of thing that we're going to learn going forward with this kind of data. So the 3 big takeaways for us, understanding that digital has become a very big part of that last 10 yards, understanding that there's a lot going on there and they're looking at a lot of different things. We need to understand every single one of those. And then finally understanding that we now have a mechanism to really dig in and understand who these people are and what it means to our business.
Awesome, dude. Great job. And as we wrap up, I just want to point out the following. We are waking up in the industry to what big data offers us. On one hand, the potential of integrating attitudinal and the behavioral data, but also waking up to the reminder that data, big or small, in and of itself is not wisdom, it's not guidance, it's not knowledge, and it may not even be actionable. So as researchers, a couple of key takeaways. Number 1, there is gold in them thar hills, no doubt about it. In fact, the idea of understanding a mindset of a consumer and then what they're doing online is going to be enormously helpful to us. I would argue that behavioral data without attitudinal data is a numerator without a denominator. We're also beginning to see something we've known as social scientists, that what people say they do and what they actually do is different. In this study, we're able to quantify that very specifically because we asked people which websites and types of websites that they visited, and then we actually looked at it on their home PC. And what we saw was an inflation factor, and that's what you're looking at here, is the inflation factor between what they said they were doing and what they actually did. And the interesting observation is that the inflation factor declined over time, suggesting that if you want to calibrate what people say with what they actually do as it relates to digital, you're going to need a few repeated waves to get it right. And finally, there is this whole issue of figuring out what this means for the science and for the business. I won't spend a lot of time dwelling on the difficulties of this kind of research, but trust me, unstructured data is a challenge in and of itself, and websites are definitely sticking your mouth over a fire hydrant. But I would go more higher level to the quote from Joe Tripoli, Chief Marketing Officer of Coca-Cola, who said, the critical challenge for chief marketing officers today is to reskill their organizations and develop new capabilities to handle big data, digital, analytics, social media, gamification, and design. And our job in this industry is to play a critical role in helping that happen. So what will that require? We're going to need a brain, people. I'm going to need a voice that doesn't sound like Joe Pesci and a brain. Fantastic. But I'm absolutely confident because we have seen these waves of innovation before. The market research industry converted itself to online by embracing pilot tests, by working carefully over time, and by understanding the role that it does and does not play. And I believe ultimately with this type of learning, as we move further down the path, it'll be just like the good witch said. We'll just know that it was here all along and all we had to do was click. Thank you.